Okay, today we're going to be dedicating two items that are related to our church history. One of them is a display case, which will become the new home of our historical Thomas Davidson Bible. And the other item is a painting of Mount Wesley Chapel, which was our first Methodist church. And again, both of them are on the bulletin. Now, I'm here today to give you a brief history on both items. And I'm going to start with the display case and the Thomas Davidson Bible. I'm going to start by trying to answer three questions. Number one, who was Thomas Davidson? Number two, why is he so important to our church? And three, how did we get his Bible? Thomas Davison was a resident of Davidsonville who was born in 1800 and died in 1868. He lived in the big white house right at the corner of the crossroads, diagonally opposite Davidsonville store. By the mid-1830s and 1840s, he had become a very prominent, wealthy, and important man in the community. He owned over 300 acres right here in the heart of Davidsonville. In 1830, he became the first postmaster of Davidsonville. Now, as was the custom back in those days, many times a town or a village would name their community after their first postmaster. So that's how Davidsonville got its name, after Thomas Davison, their first postmaster. Now, all these accomplishments are well and good, but it really doesn't say why he was important to our church. The reason why Thomas Davison was important to our church is because he was the founder of our first church. He provided the land to have the church built. He gave financial aid in the building of the church, and he was a key leader in the church his entire life and right up until the time he died. Now, how did we get the Bible? Usually a Bible is a cherished possession of a family, and they usually hand it down from generation to generation. So how did we end up with the Davison Bible? Well, the story goes like this. Thomas Davison and his wife Jane had 6 children. 4 of the 6 would die around the age of 2, and they're all buried in our cemetery. They did have 2 sons that lived into adulthood. One was named Ernest, but Ernest was tragically killed in 1906 when he was struck by lightning. And he and his wife had no children. The other son, Benjamin, became a very successful doctor, and he lived right over here in this house by the parking lot. He had a daughter named Alice. Now, Alice would be a Davidsonville resident. She would never marry, and she'd never have any children. So, when Alice's grandparents died, and then her mother and father died, Alice now is the last Davison to be a member of our church. So in 1960, when Alice was 83 years old, she was in poor health and living in a nursing home, she gives the Bible to our church in memory of her grandfather, who was the founder of the church. On August 28, 1960, the church officially receives the Bible and in a small ceremony, and the pastor at the church at the time who received the Bible, name was Reverend Davis Peck. Now, Reverend Peck said when he received the Bible, they put it out on display on a table, but for everybody to see. Shortly thereafter, he got transferred to another church. So the congregation and the new pastor decided that because they didn't really have a secure place to put this historic Bible, that they would store it away for safekeeping. Well, it was stored away for about 40 years. And after about the first 15 years, everybody in the church had pretty much forgotten about it, and anybody who came in new didn't even know it existed. Well, the Bible doesn't resurface again until about the late 1990s, and this is when Reverend Peck now comes back to our church, this time as a retired member of the church. Now, of course, he remembered the Bible because he's the one who received it. So he takes on the task of trying to find the Bible, and he does. He said it took him a while to do it after 40 years of clutter. But in any case, at that time, there was some talk about maybe, getting a display case and putting it out for everybody to see. But it never seemed to work out. We just never got around to it. So last year, just about this time, Jean Smith came to our rescue, and she said that she would like to provide the sum necessary to have the display case made, and she would like to dedicate it in the name of her late husband, Russ. So we got Adam Smith, who is a member of our woodworkers club that meets here, and Adam arranged to have a display case made. So we'd like to thank both Jean and Adam, because now we have a safe and secure place for our historical Bible, and we've basically been waiting 50 years for this to happen. So again, we're dedicating the display case in the memory of Russ Smith, given by his wife Jean. Now the second item is the painting. The painting is of Mount Wesley Chapel, which was our first church. This is the church that Thomas Davison started or founded. It was located in our present-day cemetery, but it was not a cemetery at that time. It was an open field. The doors were opened on November 19th, 1844. It was a brown, well not brown, but a wooden structure that had a steeple, and the congregation asked the village blacksmith to see if he could make him a bell to put in the steeple, which he did. The man's name was Thomas Talbot. Now Thomas Talbot was also a founding member of our church, and he is also buried in our cemetery. The little church stayed in service from 1844 until 1924, when this church opened up. Now we only have two items left from the old church. One of them is the Thomas Talbot bell, which now hangs up here in our steeple and is rung every Sunday. And the other one is a stained glass window, which is now located in the front of our building on the northeast corner. So they remain from Mount Wesley Chapel. Now, how do we know what Mount Wesley Chapel really looked like? Well, we found one photograph that, people have been looking for it, and we found one photograph that was taken in 1925. This was probably just months before it was torn down and the lumber was sold to a local farmer. I took the photograph to a local artist named Mildred Anderson, and she specializes in painting old churches and old homes and old barns. And she recreated our church from the photograph, and she did a great job of it. You can see it on your bowl. Where did the painting come from? The painting comes from the Hopkins family, and we are dedicating it in the memory of our grandfather, Milton O. Hopkins, who was the first Hopkins to attend Davidsonville Methodist Church. And he would have actually attended Mount Wesley Chapel when he first joined over 100 years ago. Now both items are in the back, and hopefully, like Pastor Wendy said, you'll stop by and look at them, or you already have. But we're going to use that little foyer area there as our history corner, because now we have all our historical things all in one spot. We have our Bible in a display case. We have a picture of Mount Wesley Chapel, our first church, hanging above it. We have the Thomas Talbot bell in our steeple. Now you can't see the bell, but you can see the rope that leads to the bell. So that's close enough, I guess. And then we have the stained glass window, which I said was located in the front of the church on the northeast corner. As of this week, we've added a fifth item, and this is from Chris Tucker, who found a picture of this church that probably dates back to about the 1930s. And remember, this church was built in 1924. So that was back during the Depression. The last thing I want to say before I leave is I would like to thank Adam Smith for all the work he's done setting up our little historical area. He was responsible for getting the display case made. He made all the frames from scratch. He even cut the glass for the frames. He made all the wooden pieces for the plaques. And he installed all the pictures on the wall. So I think Adam deserves a round of applause for all the work he did.